got a very special guest with me. He is the editor-in-chief of the dollarvigilante.com, which he, of course, also has a YouTube channel. Thank you for joining me today.
Pleasure.
So, right off the bat, tell people who are uninitiated about yourself and what the Dollar Vigilante is.
All right, so I'll initiate you. Actually, I'm still learning about myself. I really have no clue who I really am, but I'm called Jeff Berwick. That's what my mom called me. I guess I came from a family of Berwick people from Scotland. I write the Dollar Vigilante, and it's basically the tagline of the Dollar Vigilante is surviving and prospering during and after the dollar collapse. And I started in 2010, and I said it will collapse within the decade, which is 2020. We're getting close, got about a year and a half, and I think we're pretty on track for that.
Sticking with this subject of collapses around the world, from your videos, you've been to the likes of Venezuela when you've seen it offhand and direct and in your face. So how can people benefit from crypto and blockchain, especially in places in the third world like Somalia and Venezuela and so on and so forth?
Well, it's incredibly easy to understand how you benefit when you live in a place where the hyperinflation is something in the millions per year. I went to Venezuela about a year and a half ago, and for about $100 is about a backpack of money, and now it's about a carload of money. It's over already. This happens all the time in many different countries. It happened in Zimbabwe 10 years ago. It has happened in Germany in the 1920s. It will happen actually everywhere, because when you have a fiat currency backed by nothing and a government that can just do whatever it wants and spend as much money as it wants, and the central bank just prints up money to pay for it, you eventually go into hyperinflation and everything. And we now have the U.S. government at over $21 trillion, which is way more than twice as much as when Barack drone bomber, the Nobel Peace Prize winning president who didn't have one day of peace his whole presidency, when his regime took over in 2008, it was about $9 trillion. So we're heading into hyperinflation of debt, which will end up in hyperinflation of the fiat currencies. And so it's not just for people out there in Venezuela or Zimbabwe or Greece, which has had some problems in the last few years. In fact, what usually happens is people wait until it's too late to find out another option. That's what happened in Greece. I was saying to Greek people before they closed all the banks for many months at a time, I said, get into Bitcoin. Not many people listened to me. And as soon as they closed the banks, everyone lined up down the street for the bank. It's like, you're doing it wrong. You should do that before they close the bank. But because they have the mainstream media, the television programming, they will never tell you what's truly going on. So they will always say on the news, everything's fine, until it isn't fine. So really it's up to everyone to take control of their own lives and to use whichever form of money they believe is the best one for them. And I would advise you not to use any form of money from any government that can print up money at will. It's called fiat currency. That they actually use laws, which are order followers, which are people who go against their own conscience and actually hurt other people on behalf of the people who rule them, in a complete enslavement system, to look at other forms of currency. And right now we have some currencies that are not government, not central bank, that are private, things like Bitcoin and even things like gold and silver. Just start using things that governments and central banks can't inflate, and you will have a much, much better time over the next few years.
Sticking with government, I remember a few years ago in the Obama administration where his administration used the words they were deeply concerned about the use of Bitcoin and its rise. Do you think that they should be concerned about the rise of cryptocurrencies at this point?
Well, yeah, and he actually expanded on that. He said Bitcoin is like having a Swiss bank account in your pocket. And then he further expanded and said, if everyone has a Swiss bank account in their pocket, how can we do simple things like tax enforcement? The answer is they can't, and that is good. Taxation is theft, it's extortion, it's how they actually impoverish most people in the world. So, yes, they are deeply concerned, and they should be, and there's actually nothing they can do to stop it at this point. But we'll see what happens. They are trying their best. But of course, a true private digital currency threatens the central banking system, which is the Federal Reserve and things like that have been around for a few hundred years. And they realize that if that power is taken away, that most power of all governments are taken away. It's actually how they pay for many of the things that they actually do is by inflating the currency, impoverishing everyone without anyone even understanding what's going on. I think it was Keynes, actually. Excuse me. John Maynard Keynes in 1930 said, "Not one man in a million understands inflation." And even to this day, that's fairly close. And they don't teach you what money is in the government indoctrination camps, which are called schools. And they don't teach you on the television programming, things like CNBC, what money is. Even Henry Ford said in the early 20th century, if people understood how the money system works, there'd be a revolution tomorrow. And that is still the case. And the only thing that has changed since then is we now have another option. So if people are able or capable of waking up, they do have the option to get away from this extortion and slavery system now if they want to.
What advice could you give to businesses to get away from, and I'll start again. What advice do you have for businesses and to those already in, established businesses, whether in startups or, corporations that want to move away from the traditional mode of, doing trade with one another and move over to the crypto and blockchain world?
Well, every business is going to be different. If you have a internet-based business, there are so many ways to set it up in such a way that you can put it in an offshore jurisdiction which has no taxes, a place like the Cayman Islands. You can also accept cryptocurrency and also be offshore, and then it'd be even less chance you'll be extorted. If you have a physical business in a place like the U.S., let's say it's a restaurant, it gets a little harder. However, if you start accepting Bitcoin, you can start to avoid some of the taxation of those extortion systems. But really, it's up to everyone to start to just use these sort of currencies. So in day-to-day life, in day-to-day transactions, maybe you approach your landlord and you say, hey, why don't you accept Bitcoin? And, you don't have to put on your tax forms. There is ways to track it. But that's really one thing that a lot of people don't understand. This whole taxation extortion system is a big scam, but it's also a big game. They can't track every single transaction that every single person's doing, but they make it seem like it. They want people to be scared. That's what mafias do. They scare you into, we owe them. They're going to come for us if we kind of hide from them. I would say to people out there that, get a little bit of courage, just a little bit, and stand up for what you think's right. If you think you're being extorted by a mafia, which is government and taxation, and you're a man especially, I want to say this, because this is really the role of men. And this is something they're also trying to destroy in our society, trying to make men seem weak, trying to make women seem stronger. A true man who truly believes that what he's doing is right will stand up to almost anything. But we have the case today where some men won't even take the chance of maybe using Bitcoin to kind of get around being extorted. It's really sad, actually. But really, that's all it would take is a few people just to say, you know what? I own myself. Who are these people who are extorting me? I did not agree to this. I've never seen the social contract. I do not go along with what you want to do. And yes, some people might end up in some cages, in jails. Some people might end up being killed. If you look back at the U.S. Revolution against the English, we're here in London. A lot of those guys they were called terrorists, and a lot of them were killed and tortured. That's kind of what it takes to stand up to anyone who wants to control you. And today it's as easy as a click of a button, opening a Bitcoin account, not filing your tax forms, hitting like and share to videos like ours on YouTube. And it can be over so quickly. We just need people just to have a little bit of confidence, a little bit of courage. And if they don't, and if enough people don't do it, we're going to end up in a completely tyrannical world. And so that's, it's that easy to get out of. But People are scared and confused, and they've gone to government indoctrination camps. They've been fooled. They turn on television programming. It's all propaganda. They don't really know what's going on. But, listen to your heart, listen to your soul. Who really owns you? It's you. That's the only person who owns you. And if anyone else tells you they own you, tell them where to go.
Sticking on this subject for a little bit, I was going to ask you later, but I might as well just ask you now. Do you think we're at this point where we are at a fork in the road in history, whereby in terms of, where we're going in society, we could go one way or the other? And this could not only apply to blockchain, but in terms of the bigger picture overall.
Yeah, I think there's so many times in history where we've had turning points and, moments where people can kind of generally decide which way they want to go. And this is definitely another one of them. And thanks to technology, thanks to the internet, thanks to things like cryptocurrencies, we have the opportunity to move away from an enslavement system or adhere to it. And I'm here at the Blockchain Summit, and a lot of the talks are how can government regulate, how can we get know your client and anti-money laundering laws into cryptos. Just so you know, money laundering is one of the best things you could ever do. It means you're trying to save yourself from being extorted by criminals. That's basically all it means. So yes, we're at a huge inflection point. That's what my talk about was today. I think within the next few years, we'll know which way it's going to go. At this moment in time, it's pretty 50-50. I'm always a bit more optimistic, even though I sound pessimistic in some ways. I think we are going to get to a better place, but this is the time. And it's really interesting because your average person has no idea what's going on. They just think, oh, I heard about this Bitcoin, maybe something. This is, our biggest chance yet as humanity to free ourselves, and it'll all be played out in the next few years. It's not going to be 10 or 20 years. It's going to be the next few years. So we'll see what happens. I wish us all luck.
How can blockchain technology save us?
Well, actually, in my speech, I pointed out that blockchain isn't necessarily the greatest thing ever, because blockchain is essentially a ledger of recording information. And if that ledger is completely public, it can be used to really control by mafias and governments to say, oh, we know you're doing this, we know you're doing that, we want a cut of this, we want a cut of that. Blockchain's important when it's cryptographically secure. And this is where cryptocurrencies came from in the beginning, is the importance of it being quite private. Now, Bitcoin isn't completely private. Every single transaction is recorded. Now, no one necessarily knows who did that transaction. There might be a few IP addresses involved, but it'll be really important to get even more cryptographically secured currencies like Monero to be used more, because if we didn't have governments and central banks, it wouldn't be that important to hide every transaction you do. But when you've got a group of people with a lot of guns who want to steal most of your money, it's a good idea to be able to make sure they don't know every single thing you're doing. So the question, how important is blockchain? Blockchain is incredibly important, but more important is the cryptographic side of it, because that is the privacy side. Both are important, and both are going to develop one way or another. But if it's not cryptographically controlled and every single government in the world can track every single transaction you make, that's the end game for one world government, one world taxation system, one world currency, and complete tyranny like George Orwell tried to describe.
Do you think that, I'm going to play devil's advocate for a moment and bring up the example of the likes of Silk Road. Do you think it got shut down the way it did, looking back on it, because it gained so much notoriety and basically couldn't stay out of the limelight, and that goes with the dark web as well? And Bitcoin hasn't really shaken off its reputation as being that of being associated with criminals and the underworld and such and such.
Well, the biggest currency associated with criminals is the U.S. dollar. The Department of Defense, the Pentagram, the CIA, the world's biggest terrorist organization by far. The Silk Road is an interesting story. I think Russ Ulbricht, Dread Pirate Roberts, made a few mistakes, unfortunately. If I did not know him personally at the time. If I did, I would have told him to get out of the U.S. What he was doing was leading edge. He was trying to start a free market. They call it black market, but what black means is free. A free market where anyone can trade anything they want. And that's beautiful, and that's great. And we don't need any government bureau rats making sure we're trading what they want us to trade. A true free market is the most beautiful thing. He made a number of mistakes. He lived in the U.S. He wasn't careful enough about who he talked to about what he was doing. And yeah, the CIA, the FBI, the U.S. government, Mossad, Israelis, so many of them, NSA, I could go on and on. Facebook, FBI book, Google, they're tracking everything, and he wasn't careful enough. And because of that, he got kidnapped, and he's now in a maximum security prison for numerous lifetimes, which is the ultimate insult, for just having a website where people can trade. So that was a really sad story, but hopefully people in the future are. And then, of course, it hasn't stopped it. There's many other black free market places you can buy anything you want on the internet, and most of them are probably using Monero now for that reason.
It's almost like they're playing whack-a-mole. You shut one down, another 10 will appear, and then another 10, another 50 to 100, and so on and such. I want to talk about this nascent trend of blockchain technology, and do you think that businesses can benefit from it, not just startup necessarily, but also the likes of Spotify and iTunes, Apple, you name it?
I think as a business owner, you'd be crazy not to accept crypto. Every business I've ever known, and I use crypto all the time. I accept crypto from our clients, and I pay all our employees in crypto. To me, it'd be a nightmare to have to use bank accounts and wire transfers and all that kind of stuff for Western Union and all the expenses. Every business I've ever known that's, it could be, I see a yacht out there, I guess it's some sort of yacht taxi. If they just put out today, we accept Bitcoin, they're actually going to get more clients. There's going to be a lot of people who really love Bitcoin who are going to go, well, I could take that one or the one that takes Bitcoin, right? So they're going to have an advantage in the market. What they don't fully realize is it's actually so much better to be using things like cryptocurrencies in day-to-day transactions. It's much cheaper, much faster. I have employees all across the world. I couldn't imagine having to send them tens of thousands of dollars every month via bank wires and Western Union. So basically, I don't know how many employees I have. I have people who do a lot of this for me, but let's just say it's 20 right now, and they're all in different countries. I know what happens is they all send their invoices in, it goes to my guy, and he goes to our Bitcoin account, and he goes beep, 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 and that's it. Try doing that with bank wire transfers to different countries. Some of them are going to get frozen. They're going to take a certain amount. They're going to want to know where it's coming from or why it's going to. That's the real thing about cryptos. It's actually so much better than the current monetary and banking system, but people don't realize it. So that's why I say to everyone, if you've never used crypto, if you've never used Bitcoin, just get some one way or another, buy some on an exchange or find someone who has some and buy some from them. Start using it. And once you start using it, you just realize, why would I ever use a bank again?
You've just touched on this point just now, but I'm going to bring it up a little bit more. So what do we do in terms of the masses to get them to give up their bank accounts and, receive payments if I were to be employed by you?
Just like anything, a lot of it's very organic. So it's really up to all of us to, in our day-to-day lives. So if I have a landlord and I'm paying $1,000 a month rent, to go, hey, can I pay you in Bitcoin? And then if he goes, what's Bitcoin? I'll show him. I'll spend 5 minutes. It really, that's what's going to take to get it out there to all the masses, because there is no Bitcoin marketing department. There's no Bitcoin CEO. It's really, truly something of the masses. It's something of the people. And in order for it to expand dramatically, we need to be proactive. We need to go to stores and say, do you accept Bitcoin? And when they say no, say, why not? And, tell them, sign up on this, you can accept Bitcoin. The other way that this can really expand is just as more better services come online. See, we're still in the very early stages of cryptocurrency, so it's actually still not what I call grandma ready, right? You can go to your grandma and tell her it's a lot of it's going to go over her head. But just like what happened with Uber, I think Uber is an excellent example. Uber didn't exist a few years ago. All of a sudden, it's the biggest taxi company in the world, and it owns no taxis. It's just an app on your phone. Now, why did that happen? They didn't have a big advertising campaign. I don't think I've ever seen an Uber ad, but it worked so well that friends just told their friends. They said, I've been taking these crappy government taxis and it sucks. I press this button, it shows right up. If you ask your average person, why am I using Uber now? They won't go, oh, because it's not connected to the government monopoly on taxis, and it's not connected to the currency system in this particular way. They'll just go, it's just better. And really that's the case with cryptos. It is better, but a lot of the technology that needs to be built out is still in a very early stage. So even though Bitcoin started in 2009, I didn't even know about it till 2011. Most people didn't even hear about it till 2013, 14, 15. So we're still in the first few years of this. And there's billions of dollars going into this market. And as you can see at these conferences, there's entrepreneurs everywhere working on ways to figure out ways to get this out to the public more. Those will come out in the next few years. And one or two of those, I believe personally, I don't know who they are. I wish I knew. If you know, let me know. It's going to be massive. They're going to become incredibly rich. They'll become, like sort of like the Chase Bank of Bitcoin or whatever. If they can find a way to integrate it in such a way that your average person doesn't need to know about their private keys or how it all works, but they can still use it. So we're still in the very early stages of this, but I'm actually impressed. I didn't think we'd be at this stage already in 2018. So to me, it's expanding rapidly, and there's nothing that's going to stop it.
Okay. So we've got very little time left. So, yeah. What advice do you have for students that may be watching this in terms of blockchain technology, and if you have any final thoughts at all?
Sure. I would say quit school. School's a outdated waste of time. Even high school, junior high, quit immediately. Look into things like unschooling. Just get out there and create a business. That's the best way to learn. The other best way to learn is to travel. If you want to learn blockchain stuff, there isn't that many great schools. There's one called Academy, but I don't know how far along they are. Just like with many of these things, you almost have to learn it yourself, but the resources are out there on the internet. This old style of waking up at 9 in the morning, going and sitting in a wooden chair for 8 hours a day learning, that's not the way. You can sit in your home, sit in Starbucks, and learn blockchain technology on your own. And I will say this, anyone who really understands blockchain technology will make a lot of money over the next few years. There's a massive shortage of people and programmers, and not even just programmers, even people who are involved in graphical user interfaces or even sales and marketing. This is the place. This is the place to be. So you cannot lose by spending some time learning about these things, and then the market's going to be massive for you.
And you heard it from him himself. You're in the right place. You paid for this course, so you're going to make so much more in return. Jeff, it's been a pleasure.
I didn't even know you had a course. So there you go. So I want to hear about your course because, there's more about it, like more information needed out there. So I definitely like to check out your course. And thank you for having me on.